The rain was relentless, hammering the windshield of my beat-up Honda as I sat frozen in the parking lot of Maplewood Elementary, my heart pounding louder than the storm. My son, Eli, was inside, probably charming his second-grade teacher with another wild story about our weekend at the arcade. But I couldn't shake the text I'd gotten an hour ago. "Hey, it's Caleb. Want to come over for dinner tonight? Just us and the boys." Caleb Harper, the alpha single dad from Eli's class. The guy every parent whispered about, former Marine, built like a linebacker, and raising his son, Noah, alone had invited me. Oliver Grant, the quiet bookstore clerk with zero social game, to his house. I wasn't ready for this. Not for the way my stomach flipped when I saw his name on my phone, or for the way I'd caught myself staring at him during last month's PDA meeting, his deep voice cutting through the room like a warm blade. I'd spent years building walls around my heart after my ex, Mark, left me with nothing but a half-empty apartment and a toddler. Dating wasn't even on my radar until Caleb. But a guy like him, he was out of my league. A straight-shooting, small-town hero who probably just wanted to talk about soccer schedules or school fundraisers. Right. I glanced at the clock. 3:45 p.m. Eli would be out soon, and I needed to decide, blow off the invite and stick to my safe, predictable life, or take a chance on a dinner that might just be nothing. My fingers hovered over my phone, drafting a polite excuse, when Eli burst through the school doors, his backpack bouncing, his grin wide enough to light up the gray afternoon. "Dad, Noah says his dad's making lasagna tonight, and we're invited." His excitement was a gut punch. No backing out now. Caleb's house was a modest craftsman on the edge of town, the kind of place that looked lived in but loved, with a tricycle tipped over in the front yard and a porch light flickering in the drizzle. I parked behind his pickup truck, my nerves buzzing as Eli tugged me toward the door. "Come on, Dad. It's gonna be fun," he said, oblivious to the storm in my chest. I smoothed my sweater, wishing I'd worn something less bookish, and rang the bell. Caleb answered, and God, he was even more overwhelming up close. 6'2", broad shoulders stretching his flannel shirt, his dark hair slightly mussed like he'd just run a hand through it. His hazel eyes locked onto mine, and for a split second, I forgot how to breathe. "Oliver, hey," he said, his voice low and warm, like he was genuinely glad I was there. "Come in. Get out of the rain." He stepped aside, and I caught the scent of cedar and something distinctly him as I brushed past. Eli already darting inside to find Noah. The house smelled like garlic and melted cheese, and the living room was a cozy chaos of toys, books, and a half-built Lego castle. "Hope you're hungry," Caleb called from the kitchen, where he was pulling a steaming lasagna from the oven. Noah's been hyping this up all day. His son, a wiry kid with Caleb's eyes and a mop of blonde curls, was already dragging Eli toward the castle, both of them giggling like they'd been best friends forever. I stood there, awkward, clutching the bottle of cheap wine I'd brought like it was a lifeline. "Dinner's almost ready," Caleb said, wiping his hands on a dish towel and flashing a smile that made my knees weak. "You okay with red sauce?" Noah's picky, so I kept it simple. He was so at ease, so effortlessly in charge, and I felt like a fish out of water, nodding too quickly. "Yeah, sounds great," I managed, my voice tighter than I wanted. He tilted his head, studying me like he could see the nerves I was trying to hide. "Relax, Oliver," he said softly. "It's just dinner." But it wasn't just dinner. I could feel it in the way he looked at me, in the way he leaned a little closer when he handed me a glass of wine, his fingers brushing mine for a fraction of a second too long. We sat at the table, the boys chattering about superheroes and school, while I tried to focus on my plate instead of the man across from me. Caleb was all confidence, laughing easily, his presence filling the room. But there was something else there too, a flicker of vulnerability when he talked about Noah. About raising him alone after his wife died 3 years ago. "It's just me and him," he said, his voice quieter now. "Gets lonely sometimes." I swallowed hard, my own story bubbling up. "I get that," I said, surprising myself. "Eli's mom left when he was 2. It's been just us since." Caleb's eyes softened, and for a moment, it was like the boys' laughter faded, and it was just us, 2 single dads carrying the weight of the world, finding something in each other we hadn't expected. As the night went on, the conversation flowed easier: books, music, the chaos of parenting. Caleb teased me about my love for sci-fi novels, and I shot back about his obsession with classic rock. The boys fell asleep on the couch, tangled in a blanket, and Caleb and I moved to the kitchen to clean up. That's when it happened. He was drying a plate, standing close enough that I could feel the heat of him, and he said, "I'm glad you came tonight, Oliver. I've been wanting to do this for a while." My heart stopped. "You have?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He set the plate down, turning to face me fully, his eyes searching mine. "Yeah," he said, and there was no mistaking the weight in his voice. The way it carried something deeper, something that could unravel everything I thought I knew about myself, about him, about what was possible. And then Noah called out from the living room, sleepy and whining, and the moment broke. But as I drove home that night, Eli snoring in the back seat, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. That Caleb's invitation wasn't just about lasagna. It was about us 12 broken pieces that might just fit together. The next morning, I woke up with Caleb's words echoing in my head. "I've been wanting to do this for a while." I stared at the ceiling of my tiny apartment, Eli's soft snores drifting from his room, and tried to make sense of it. Was he just being friendly? Or was there something more? I wasn't used to this. Hope was a dangerous thing, and I'd learned the hard way to keep it locked up tight. At the bookstore, I was distracted, shelving novels in the wrong sections while my coworker, Sarah, raised an eyebrow. "You okay, Oliver? You've been staring at that copy of Dune like it's got all the answers." I forced a laugh, muttering something about a long night. But the truth was, I couldn't stop replaying the dinner. The way Caleb's laugh filled the room, the way his hand brushed mine, the way he looked at me like I was more than just the quiet guy in the background. By noon, my phone buzzed with a text. "Noah keeps asking when Eli can come over again. You free this weekend?" My pulse spiked. It was Caleb. I typed and deleted 3 different replies before settling on, "Yeah, sounds good. Let me know when." Casual, safe, but inside, I was a mess. What was I doing? Caleb was the kind of guy who could have anyone. Why would he be interested in me? I was just me. 32, average build, glasses that always slid down my nose, and a life that revolved around my kid and my job. But that look in his eyes last night, it wasn't nothing. Saturday came too fast. Caleb suggested a barbecue at his place, and I spent an embarrassing amount of time picking out a shirt that didn't scream desperate single dad. Eli was bouncing with excitement, clutching a toy spaceship to show Noah. When we pulled up to Caleb's house, the smell of charcoal and grilled burgers hit us before we even got out of the car. Caleb was in the backyard, flipping patties, wearing a faded t-shirt that clung to his shoulders in a way that made it hard to focus. "You made it," he called, waving us over, his grin bright enough to rival the afternoon sun. The boys ran off to play, leaving me and Caleb by the grill. He handed me a beer, and we fell into easy conversation work. The kids, the absurdity of school bake sales. But there was an undercurrent, a tension I couldn't ignore. Every time our eyes met, it felt like a challenge, like he was daring me to acknowledge whatever was sparking between us. "You're good with Eli?" he said suddenly, his voice softer. "It's not easy, doing it alone." I shrugged, staring at the bottle in my hand. You make it look easy. Noah's lucky to have you. He laughed, but it was tinged with something heavier. I fake it half the time, he admitted. After Lauren died, I didn't know if I could keep it together. Still don't. Sometimes. His honesty caught me off guard, and I found myself opening up too, telling him about Mark, about the nights I'd stayed up wondering if I was enough for Eli. The afternoon slipped away, and as the sun dipped low, Caleb suggested we take the boys to the park down the street. Watching him push Noah on the swings while Eli climbed the jungle gym, I felt something shift inside me, a longing I hadn't let myself feel in years. Caleb caught my eye and smiled, and for a moment, I let myself imagine a life where this was normal, us, the boys, together. But doubt crept in, as it always did. What if I was reading this wrong? What if Caleb was just lonely, looking for a friend? Not, whatever this was. I wasn't out. Not really. I'd never told anyone about the feelings I'd buried since high school. The ones I'd pushed down after Mark because it was easier to be alone than to risk getting hurt again. Caleb, Thuff, was different. He made me want to be brave. That night, after the boys were tucked in, Caleb walked me to my car. The air was cool, the stars sharp against the sky. Thanks for today, he said, his voice low, his hands shoved in his pockets like he was nervous too. I mean it, Oliver. It's nice having you around. My heart was in my throat, and before I could overthink it, I said, it's nice being around you too. His eyes held mine, and for a second, I thought he might lean in, but then Eli called from the car, and the moment was gone. Driving home, I gripped the steering wheel, my mind racing. This wasn't just about dinner or barbecues anymore. This was about Caleb, about me, about the possibility of something I'd never let myself dream of. And that scared the hell out of me. The weeks that followed were a blur of stolen moments and unspoken questions. Caleb and I fell into a rhythm: playdates for the boys, coffee runs after school drop-offs, late-night texts about nothing and everything. Each time I saw him, the pull grew stronger. Like gravity, I couldn't fight. But fear kept me tethered, whispering that I was setting myself up for heartbreak. One evening, Caleb invited us to a local fair, the kind with rickety rides and cotton candy that stuck to your fingers. Eli and Noah were in heaven, darting between games, their laughter cutting through the noise of the crowd. Caleb and I trailed behind, sharing a bag of popcorn, our shoulders brushing as we walked. You ever miss this? He asked, gesturing at the chaos around us. The carefree stuff? Before kids and bills and all that. I laughed, popping a kernel in my mouth. Sometimes. But Eli makes it worth it. Caleb nodded, his eyes on Noah, who was trying to win a stuffed dinosaur at a ring toss booth. Yeah. Noah's my whole world. But it's nice to have more than that. You know. He glanced at me, and my breath caught. Was he saying what I thought he was saying? The night ended with the boys passed out in the back seat, and Caleb and I lingered by my car, the fair's lights twinkling in the distance. Oliver, he started, his voice rough, like he was working up to something big. I need to tell you something. My heart slammed against my ribs. But before he could continue, a group of parents from school walked by, waving and calling out to Caleb. He waved back. The moment shattered, and I drove home with a knot in my chest. The next day, I couldn't focus. I was shelving books when Sarah cornered me. Spill it, Oliver. You've been acting weird for weeks. I hesitated, then told her about Caleb. Not everything, but enough. Her eyes widened. Caleb Harper. The hot dad. Oh, honey, you're in deep. She wasn't wrong, but admitting it out loud made it real, and that terrified me. That weekend, Caleb invited us to his place again, this time for a movie night. The boys picked some animated flick about talking animals, but I barely watched. too aware of Caleb sitting next to me on the couch, his arm resting close enough to send heat through my skin. After the boys fell asleep, we stayed there, the TV casting a soft glow over the room. "You okay?" he asked, his voice quiet. "You've been distant." I swallowed, my mouth dry. "I'm just trying to figure this out," I said, gesturing vaguely between us. His eyes searched mine, and then he did something I wasn't prepared for. Reach for my hand, his fingers warm and steady. "Oliver, I'm not good at this," he said. "I've been out of the game since Lauren, and I've never done this with a guy. But I know I feel something when I'm with you." My world tilted. He felt it too. But before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from my neighbor. "Eli's coughing bad. You home soon?" Panic spiked, and I bolted up, mumbling apologies as I gathered Eli and left. Caleb's confession hung in the air, unanswered. As I drove home, my mind a storm of fear and hope. Eli was fine, just a cold, but I couldn't sleep that night. Caleb's words played on a loop, and I knew I had to face this, whatever this was. The next morning, I texted him, "Can we talk? Just us." His reply came instantly, "My place. Tonight. 8 p.m." I spent the day pacing, rehearsing what I'd say, but when I walked into his house that evening, all my words vanished. Caleb was waiting in the kitchen, a beer in hand, his expression guarded. "You okay?" he asked, and I nodded, my throat tight. "I'm scared," I admitted, the words spilling out. I've felt things before, but I never acted on them. And you're so sure of yourself. And I'm just me." He stepped closer, his eyes softening. "You think I'm sure? Oliver, I'm terrified. But I know I want Thysis." And then he kissed me, slow and tentative, like he was giving me a chance to pull away. I didn't. I kissed him back, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. That kiss changed everything. It was like a door I'd kept locked for years had been kicked wide open, and I was standing on the edge of something exhilarating and terrifying. Caleb and I didn't talk much after, just held me, his forehead pressed to mine, and we stood there in his kitchen, the world outside fading away. But reality wasn't far behind, and as I drove home, Eli asleep in the back seat, doubts started creeping in again. What were we doing? Caleb was a small-town hero, the guy everyone admired, and I was just Oliver. Maplewood wasn't exactly a progressive haven. People talked, and they weren't always kind. I'd heard the whispers at school events, the sideways glances at parents who didn't fit the mold. What would they say about us? What would this mean for Eli? For Noah? I wanted this, God. I wanted it, but the risks felt like a tidal wave waiting to crash. The next week was a test. Caleb and I kept things low-key, meeting for coffee or quick chats at school pickup. But every look, every brush of his hand, felt like a secret we were guarding. I wasn't ready to tell anyone, not even Sarah, who kept shooting me knowing smirks at work. Caleb seemed to sense my hesitation, giving me space but never pulling back. His text steady and warm, "Thinking of you. Let me know when you're free." It was enough to keep me grounded, but not enough to quiet the fear. Then came the school talent show. Eli and Noah had been practicing a goofy magic act for weeks, and the auditorium was packed with parents, teachers, and kids. Caleb and I sat a few rows apart, trying to act normal, but I could feel his eyes on me, and I hated how much I loved it. The boys were a hit, fumbling through their tricks to raucous applause. And afterward, Caleb found me in the crowd. "They're going to be famous," he joked, his shoulder brushing mine. I laughed, but my stomach twisted when I noticed a few parents watching us, their expressions unreadable. That night, Caleb invited us over again, and I couldn't say no. The boys played in the backyard while we sat on the porch, beers in hand, the air thick with things unsaid. "You're worried," he said finally, his voice low. "I can tell." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "It's not you, Caleb. It's everything else. This town, the kids, what people will think." He leaned forward, his eyes steady. "I don't care what they think. I care about you. About us." His words hit hard, but before I could respond, Eli ran up, covered in dirt, demanding snacks. The moment passed, but Caleb's resolve stuck with me. He was all in, and I was still teetering on the edge. The next day, trouble found us. I was at the bookstore when Sarah showed me a post on the town's online forum. "Anyone else think it's weird how close Caleb Harper and that Grant guy are?" Not judging, just saying. My stomach dropped. It was anonymous, but the comments piled on, some curious, some cruel. I felt exposed, like someone had ripped away the curtain I'd been hiding behind. When I told Caleb, he was furious, but not at me. "Let them talk," he said, his jaw tight. "They don't get to decide who we are." But it wasn't that simple. The whispers grew louder, and I started noticing the looks at school parents who used to smile, now avoiding my gaze. Eli came home one day, quieter than usual, and when I pressed him, he mumbled, "Some kids said you and Noah's dad are weird." My heart broke. I pulled him close, telling him people sometimes say dumb things. But inside, I was spiraling. Was this worth it? Was I risking Eli's happiness for my own? Caleb didn't back down. He showed up at my apartment that night, his eyes fierce. "We're not doing anything wrong, Oliver. You hear me? This suit's worth fighting for." He pulled me into a hug, and for a moment, I believed him. But as he left, the weight of the town's judgment settled over me, and I wondered if love was enough to weather the storm. The rumors spread like wildfire, and Maplewood felt smaller every day. I'd catch people staring at the grocery store, their whispers trailing me down the aisles. At work, Sarah tried to keep things light, but even she noticed the shift customers who used to chat now kept their distance. I wanted to be strong, to stand tall like Caleb, but the weight of it all was crushing me. Caleb, tough was a rock. He didn't flinch when a group of dads at soccer practice gave him the cold shoulder. He just kept coaching Noah's team, his voice steady, his focus on the kids. I envied that, his ability to push through. But I also saw the cracks. Late one night, over a glass of whiskey at his place, he admitted, "It's harder than I let on. I'm doing this for Noah, for you, but it stings." I reached for his hand, my heart aching. "I'm sorry," I said. "I didn't want this for you." He shook his head, squeezing my fingers. "Don't apologize. You're worth it, Oliver." His words were a lifeline, but they also terrified me. What if I wasn't? What if I couldn't handle the pressure, the judgment, the way it was starting to touch Eli and Noah? The breaking point came at a PTA meeting. I'd volunteered to help with the spring fundraiser, but when I walked in, the room went quiet. A mom I barely knew, Karen, stood up and said, "Maybe it's best if Oliver steps back this year. We don't want any distractions." The word hit like a slap, and I froze, my face burning. Caleb was there, his jaw clenched, and before I could stop him, he stood up. "If Oliver's out, I'm out," he said, his voice like steel. "And good luck running this without us." We left together, the silence between us heavy. Outside, I turned to him, my voice shaking. "You didn't have to do that." He grabbed my shoulders, his eyes blazing. "Yes, I did. I'm not letting them push you out, Oliver. Not you. Not us." He kissed me, right there in the parking lot. And for a moment, I didn't care who saw. But when I got home, Eli was waiting, his eyes red from crying. "Why do people hate you, Dad?" he asked, and my heart shattered. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch, staring at a photo of Eli and me at the beach, wondering if I was selfish for wanting this life with Caleb. The next morning, I called him, my voice barely steady. "I need time," I said. "For Eli." "For me." He was quiet for a long moment, then said, "Okay, but I'm not going anywhere." Hanging up felt like cutting off a piece of myself, but I needed to protect my son. The days without Caleb were hollow. Eli noticed, asking why we weren't seeing Noah as much, and I dodged the question, hating myself for it. Work was a blur. The bookstore a refuge where I could hide in the stacks and pretend the world wasn't falling apart. But then Sarah showed me another forum post. "Caleb Harper's still hanging around that guy. Guess he's made his choice." The cruelty of it burned. But worse was the guilt tide pushed Caleb away, and he was still taking the heat. A week later, Noah's birthday rolled around, and Eli begged to go. I couldn't say no, not when he looked at me with those big, hopeful eyes. Caleb's house was full of kids and parents, the backyard strung with lights, the air filled with laughter. Caleb greeted us, his smile warm but cautious, and I felt the ache of missing him. As the kids played, we ended up alone by the grill again, the tension between us palpable. "I miss you," he said quietly, not looking at me. "I know you need time, but I miss you." My throat tightened, and I wanted to say it back, to tell him I was ready to fight for this, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I just nodded, my eyes stinging. As we watched the boys cut Noah's cake, I realized something. Caleb wasn't just fighting for me. He was fighting for a future where our kids could grow up knowing love was worth the cost. The distance I'd put between me and Caleb didn't last. It couldn't. Every time I saw him at school, at the park, even just in my mind, was a reminder of what I was too scared to claim. But Noah's birthday had cracked something open in me. Watching him and Eli together, seeing Caleb's quiet strength, I knew I couldn't keep running from this. I called him the next day, my hands shaking as I dialed. "Can we talk?" I asked, and he didn't hesitate. "My place. Tonight. Boys can hang out." When I got there, Eli and Noah disappeared into the backyard, leaving us in the kitchen, the same place where this had all started. Caleb looked tired. His usual confidence dimmed, and it hit me how much my pulling back had hurt him. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice cracking. I got scared, and I didn't know how to handle it. He leaned against the counter, his eyes searching mine. "I get it, Oliver. This isn't easy, but I need to know if you're in or out. I can't keep guessing." His honesty cut deep, and I took a breath, forcing myself to be brave. "I'm in," I said. "I want Thesis. I need you to help me figure out how." His face softened, and he stepped closer, pulling me into a hug that felt like coming home. "We'll figure it out together," he whispered, and I believed him. That night, we talked for hours about the town, the kids, the fears we both carried. He told me about his own struggles, how he'd questioned himself after Lauren's death, how he'd never expected to fall for a guy but couldn't deny what he felt for me. It was raw, real, and it made me love him more. We decided to take it slow, to keep things quiet for the boys' sake. But we weren't hiding. Not really. We started spending more time together: family dinners, movie nights, trips to the lake with Eli and Noah. The boys didn't question it. To them, it was just their dads being friends. But the town noticed, and the whispers didn't stop. At a school board meeting, someone suggested reviewing the inclusivity policy, and I knew it was aimed at us. Caleb squeezed my hand under the table, his jaw tight, and I felt a surge of defiance. We weren't going anywhere. Then came the moment that tested us. Eli came home from school one day, his backpack dragging, his face pale. "A kid called me a name," he said, his voice small. Because of you and Noah's dad. My stomach dropped, and I pulled him into a hug, my mind racing. That night, I went to Caleb's, my anger and fear spilling over. What are we doing to them? I asked. Eli doesn't deserve this. Caleb's eyes were fierce. Neither does Noah. But we can't let a few idiots dictate our lives. We'll talk to the boys. Make sure they understand. So we did. The next evening, we sat them down, explaining in simple terms that we cared about each other, that families look different, and that love is what matters. Eli looked confused but nodded, and Noah just shrugged, saying, "Cool. Can we play now?" Their acceptance was a balm, but I knew the real fight was still out there. The next week, Caleb suggested we go to a pride event in a nearby city. Just the two of us. I hesitated. Maplewood was one thing, but this felt like stepping into a spotlight. It's not about making a statement, he said. It's about being us, without fear. So we went, and walking through the crowd, holding his hand, I felt free for the first time in years. We laughed, danced, and for a few hours, the weight of the world lifted. But when we got back, reality hit hard. Someone had spray-painted a slur on Caleb's garage door. He saw it before I did, his face going pale as he sent the boys inside. "I'll handle it," he said, but I could see the hurt in his eyes. I grabbed a can of paint from his shed, and we covered it together, our hands shaking but steady. "We're stronger than this," I said, and he nodded, pulling me close. "Damn right we are." The paint on Caleb's garage door was just the beginning. The vandalism shook us, but it also lit a fire. We weren't going to let hate win. Caleb filed a police report, and though the officer was sympathetic, he warned us the culprit would be hard to catch. "Small towns," he said with a shrug, like that explained everything. But Caleb and I weren't backing down. We started talking about how to protect our kids, how to make Maplewood a place where they could grow up proud of who they were and who we were. We decided to be more open, not just for us, but for Eli and Noah. At the next school event, a science fair, we showed up together, holding hands as we cheered for the boys' volcano project. The stares were there, but so were the smiles more than I expected. A few parents, like Sarah's friend Jenna, came up to us, offering quiet support. "You guys are brave," she said, and I realized she wasn't just talking about the town. She was talking about us, choosing each other despite everything. But not everyone was on board. Karen, the mom from the PTA, started a petition to protect family values at school, and it gained traction. Caleb and I went to the next board meeting, our hearts pounding but our resolve firm. We spoke, not just as parents, but as a couple, about the kind of world we wanted for our kids, one where love wasn't a battleground. Some clapped, others scowled, but we left feeling like we'd planted a seed. At home, things were better. Eli and Noah were thriving, their friendship a constant in the chaos. Caleb and I grew closer, our nights filled with quiet moments cooking together, watching the boys play, stealing kisses when they weren't looking. But the tension lingered. One night, as we lay in bed, Caleb's arm around me, he said, "I want to build a life with you, Oliver. But I need to know you're all in." I turned to him, my heart full. "I am," I said, and I meant it. But the next day, trouble struck again. Eli came home with a black eye, saying a kid had pushed him at recess, calling him names because of us. Caleb was furious, demanding a meeting with the principal, but I felt like the ground was crumbling. "We're hurting them," I said, my voice breaking. Caleb grabbed my hands, his eyes fierce. "We're teaching them to be strong. They'll get through this, and so will we." The school stepped in, suspending the kid and holding an assembly on bullying. But the damage was done. Eli was quieter, and Noah started asking Caleb why people were so mean. We did our best, reading them books about different families, talking about love and acceptance. But I couldn't shake the guilt. Was our happiness worth their pain? Then came a turning point. Jenna invited us to a community picnic, a small gathering of families who wanted to show support. It wasn't huge, but seeing those faces, people who didn't care who we loved, who just wanted to eat burgers and laugh with our kids, gave me hope. Caleb squeezed my hand, whispering, "We're not alone." And for the first time, I believed it. As summer turned to fall, we settled into a new normal. The petition fizzled out, and the school board adopted a stronger inclusivity policy. Caleb and I started planning a future, maybe a bigger house, one where the boys could each have their own room. We weren't naive. We knew the fight wasn't over. But we were together, and that was enough. One night, as we sat on the porch, watching the boys chase fireflies, Caleb turned to me. "I love you, Oliver," he said, his voice steady. My heart swelled, and I leaned into him, whispering, "I love you too." It wasn't just a moment, it was a promise. One we'd keep fighting for, no matter what. Fall brought a crispness to Maplewood, the leaves turning gold and red, mirroring the warmth I felt every time I looked at Caleb. We'd weathered the storm, maybe not the whole war, but enough to know we could face whatever came next. Our life wasn't perfect, but it was ours, me, Caleb, Eli, and Noah, a family forged in love and resilience. The boys were back to their old selves, their laughter filling Caleb's backyard as they built a fort out of old blankets and chairs. Watching them, I felt a peace I hadn't known was possible. Caleb and I were planning our first holiday together, Thanksgiving at his place, with Sarah and Jenna joining us, a makeshift family of our own. But the past still lingered, like a shadow we couldn't quite shake. One afternoon, I got a call from the school. Eli had been in another fight, not physical this time, but a heated argument with a kid who'd taunted him about us. The principal was supportive, but I could hear the strain in her voice. "We're doing our best, Oliver, but some parents are still pushing back." I thanked her, my chest tight, and went to pick Eli up. He was quiet the whole drive home, and when we got there, he looked at me with eyes too old for his 7 years. "Are you and Caleb gonna stop being together?" he asked. I knelt down, pulling him close. "No, buddy. We love each other, and we love you and Noah. That's not changing." He nodded, but I could see the worry in his face, and it gutted me. That night, I told Caleb, expecting him to be angry, but he just pulled me into his arms. "We'll keep showing them what love looks like," he said. "They'll get it eventually." And some did. The community picnic had grown into a monthly event, a safe space for families like ours. More parents started speaking up, sharing their own stories, and slowly, the tide began to turn. Karen's petition was all but forgotten, and the school started a diversity club for the kids, led by a teacher who'd quietly come out after seeing us stand our ground. It wasn't a fairy tale, but it was progress. One evening, Caleb surprised me with a plan, a weekend trip to the coast. Just the four of us. We rented a little cabin by the ocean, the boys running wild on the beach, collecting shells and chasing waves. Caleb and I walked behind, hand in hand, the wind tugging at our jackets. "I want this forever," he said, stopping to face me, the sunset painting his face in gold. "You, me, the boys. A family." My throat tightened, and I nodded, unable to speak. That night, as the boys slept in the next room, we lay in bed, talking about the Futuria house, maybe a dog, holidays filled with chaos and love. For the first time, I wasn't afraid to dream it. Back in Maplewood, we faced one last hurdle. The town council proposed a family-friendly ordinance that could limit inclusivity programs at school. Caleb and I rallied, organizing parents, speaking at meetings, our voices stronger together. The ordinance failed, and the crowd that cheered included faces we'd never expected: old neighbors, the soccer coach, even the guy who ran the hardware store. Maplewood was changing, not because of us, but because we dared to be ourselves. A year after that first dinner, Caleb and I stood in his kitchen, the boys asleep upstairs, a bottle of wine between us. "You changed everything," I said, my voice thick with emotion. He smiled, pulling me close. "We changed it together." And as he kissed me, I knew he was right. It wasn't just the dinner that changed everything, it was us. Choosing love over fear. Building a life that was messy, beautiful, and ours. That night, as I looked at the chalkboard in the corner, the one from the first dinner, I saw the words we'd never erased: a dinner that changed us forever. They were true then, and they were true now. We'd faced the world and won. Not because we were perfect, but because we were together. And that was enough.